Maternity leave in the United States, it's a big economic issue. It's expensive for women and families, for businesses, for the government. But we all know that it must be addressed in some way. And the array of ways stands to drive a wedge or to unite Americans behind a system that we can all at least partially agree on. But first, let's just take a look at maternity leave trends around the world just as a reference. Ladies out there, don't get jealous. Now, right at the top, we have the country of France. Those high taxes are put to use big time for moms. 20 weeks paid leave, 142 weeks unpaid, and, of course, the famous subsidized childcare. Very expensive. Right at the bottom is the United States, which mandates 12 weeks unpaid leave. My guest describes the situation of maternity leave in the United States as sort of a patchwork quilt of sorts. She's got a breakdown of the various economic approaches at work in the U.S. and how they affect all of us, past administrations, the current presidential administration, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. Please welcome Hadley Heath Manning, Director of Health Policy at the Independent Women's Forum. Hadley, thank you so much for joining me on this very, very important and timely issue. Ivanka Trump's speech at the RNC, it's got to be talked about. It really surprised a lot of women on both sides of the aisle because they didn't really know what her platform issue was going to be, but she went out there and said, this has got to be fixed. There's a war on motherhood. What struck you about that speech?
Well, Ivanka Trump is right. She's noting that the economy is changing. The workforce has changed. Many women in the workforce, 40% of breadwinners in the United States today are women. So whether it's a dual income family where mom and dad are both out of the household working, whether it's a household that's more traditional where one parent stays at home and watches the kids while the other brings home the bacon, or whether it's a single parent household, American families and the American economy have changed, and our policies need to address that.
So let's talk about President Donald Trump. He has put forward, during his campaign anyway, 6 weeks paid leave, tax deductions for families for child care, and incentives for companies, I'm assuming larger ones, that if they were able to provide for child care at work. How does this depart from the traditional Republican approach to funding this sort of a thing?
Well, like a lot of things related to President Trump, it's not towing a party line. So this is a mixed bag of policy items. And I noticed at the beginning of the segment you were comparing the United States to some other countries where women and sometimes men also have a government guarantee of paid paternal leave. And in those countries, we also have to pay attention to the fact that what seems like a benefit for women can also sometimes be a limitation. So in some countries with more generous leave mandates, women are also facing a larger gender gap when it comes to their pay and also to their advancement in terms of managerial positions. So American women actually enjoy some of the highest rates when it comes to women in advanced positions, and that's something to celebrate. But one of the reasons why women can advance so much in the U.S. is because we are free to negotiate when it comes to these benefits. We can say we'd prefer to take home more money instead of having a paid maternity leave period, or we can say that those are benefits that we want. In effect, we are, as women, free to negotiate for the compensation package that suits our family and suits our budget and our needs. So that's something that the right and the left tend to see very differently. You know, on the left, they see this as a real flaw in the United States, that we don't have government guaranteed paid paternal leave. But on the right, we see it as an extension of women's freedom.
Well, also, one of the things that the Democratic Party seems to address are low-income women in low-power jobs that don't have the power to negotiate those sorts of things.
Right.
And not only that, but they had an unexpected pregnancy, maybe the man left. You know, there's these women in all of these different situations, and they come from maybe a temp agency. They can be thrown to the side. What do we say to women who haven't got that negotiating power?
Exactly. So one of the reasons many private employers in the U.S. offer paid parental leave is because they recognize that there's a cost associated with retraining and replacing workers who leave the workforce for some period of time. But of course, the cost associated with a low-skill worker in terms of finding a replacement is much lower. And in these cases, we have to pay attention to the effect that mandating paternal leave would have on the cost of employing those workers. So, for example, if a business is not currently providing a parental leave benefit and the government were to mandate that they do so, And even in the case where President Trump might use the unemployment insurance program to provide a leave period, the effect would be smaller, but the effect would still be to essentially discourage businesses from hiring female workers of childbearing age, because they're looking at a potential cost when that worker leaves the workforce for some period of time. And so we don't want to do anything that would discourage employers from hiring and advancing women. That's, of course, the other side of the coin to what may appear to be on its face beneficial to these women.
Well, let's talk about how the Democrats have approached this. Hillary Clinton and Obama's approach. It seems like every administration that goes into this wants to sort of make their mark and tweak it, make it a little bit different. What have we seen from those two camps?
Well, the most important thing to keep in mind when we talk about women in the workplace is that not all women want the same thing. Women are diverse when it comes to their family situations and their preferences. But unfortunately, the path that President Obama and Hillary Clinton would suggest when it comes to paid leave benefits would be one that really sees women as sort of cookie cutter, as if there's only one type of woman and therefore there's a one-size-fits-all solution. So Clinton would have supported a 12-week paid leave benefit at 2/3 salary up to a certain ceiling for women. And of course, this presumes that all women want to take 12 weeks and all women want this particular benefit. It would have been created a new federal entitlement, actually, to administer these benefits. And so there's costs associated with that. But in addition to the cost in terms of dollars and payroll taxes to fund a new entitlement, we also have to see the cost in the economy to women in terms of the economic opportunities that might be lost.
So you're saying that Donald Trump wanted to institute 6 weeks of paid leave, whether the woman wants to take it or not, but that wouldn't have created a new entitlement tax. That would have been rolled into a sort of Social Security program.
Right. So the difference between the approaches supported by some liberal Democrats in the Senate and Clinton when she was running for president and President Trump's approach, the difference is in the policy details. And so Democrats would like to create a new federal entitlement program housed in the Social Security Administration. Trump would like to use the existing unemployment insurance program to fund at 50% of salary a 6-week paid leave. So the differences are in the details. But of course, when we talk about policies, sometimes we talk about relative to one another. There's good, better, and best, and there's worse and worse. So we have to talk about, how some of these relate to each other.
Absolutely. And the thing is, the numbers, we can get, lose the forest for the trees, but what is for certain is that women need some sort of a balance between having the ability to have options after they have a baby, but also that not affecting their hiring process. What if you had your favorite policy, Hadley, what would it be?
Yes. Well, I think women should be allowed to save tax-free for a personal care period. And this could be something like maternity time off, or it could be time off that some women and men want to take care of elderly parents, for example, which has become a strain on certain generations. And so I think we ought to be as flexible as possible. That way the benefits can apply to women no matter what choices they make. So a personal care account, for example, would be a tax-free savings mechanism that women could save for themselves. Their employers could contribute on their behalf, or even philanthropic organizations could contribute for low-income women, for example, so that they would have the resources they need during a maternity period. This wouldn't impose a mandatory cost on any employer or put women into a rigid, 6-week or 12-week or 3-month program, but would allow them to choose how much time they want to spend inside or outside of their workplace or their home. So I think we have to keep in mind flexibility and balance and the different things that those things mean to different women.
Wow, interesting perspective. It's always interesting to stay on top of this conversation because it's always changing, and women always have, like you said, very unique needs when it comes to moving on up and having those babies. Thank you very much, Hadley Heath, Manning Director of Health Policy at the Independent Women's Forum.
Thank you, Lindsay.